Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahabati ajma'een. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah, we started our journey in the garden of intentions, and we saw that an intention is something we concretize by giving it words. But the words themselves are not the intentions. Our intentions involve us. They involve our being. We discussed how we can carry out a migration in a physical sense. We can go from physical place A to physical place B, but in doing so, we haven't really reached anywhere, at least not in a sense of where we ought to be going. Our journey is not towards a physical place, it's towards Allah and His Messenger alayhi salam. It's essentially a journey from one paradigm towards another paradigm, from one worldview to another worldview. We spoke about patience and how it is the door to worship and good character. Yesterday we spoke about sidq, truthfulness, and how sidq, how truthfulness brings repose to our hearts. We know one of the names of the Prophet alayhi salam, as-sadiq, the truthful one, al-masduq, the one in whom truth is found, and how he is the one who brings repose to our hearts. When we read his seerah alayhi salam, we find that if we want to speak about difficulties, we find them in his seerah. If we want to speak about hardships, it's there in his seerah. The pinnacle of hardship, the pinnacle of difficulty, the pinnacle of trials and tribulations and tests, we find them in his seerah. So that's why we should have a deep engagement with his life and try to take those lessons from the beautiful examples of seerah that we have, alhamdulillah. This evening's journey is through the gardens of muraqabah, which is vigilance. We are told in a very well-known hadith, a hadith which is referred to as the Hadith of Jibril alayhi salam, a long hadith where a man with extremely white clothes, extremely black hair, comes and sits in the company and the gathering of the Prophet alayhi salam and asks him a series of questions. And one of the questions that he puts to the Prophet alayhi salam is فَأَخْبِرْنِي عَنِ الْإِحْسَانِ. So tell me about this thing that we refer to as ihsan. What is it? To which the Prophet alayhi salam replies, أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. That ihsan, it's to worship Allah as if you see Him, but know that you don't see Him, but that He sees you. That's muraqabah, that's vigilance, that's journeying in the world knowing that Allah is aware of everything that we are doing. And so it's not just in our acts of worship that we bring to mind the fact that Allah is watching us and Allah is vigilant, and that we are vigilant of Allah's vigilance over us. We are aware of Allah no matter what we are doing. And that's something which will bring ourselves to account. Some of the great scholars, some of the great people of Allah, when they look at this hadith, they in fact have a reading where they say that where the Prophet ﷺ says, أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ, that to worship Allah as if you are seeing Him. فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ, and they pause. If you became naught, if you emptied the dunya out of yourself, tarahu, then you will see Him. It sort of becomes a conditional sentence that when you become nothing, you will see Allah. Because know that He always sees you. And so, as we discussed yesterday, this amazing relationship that we find between different words with the same root letters, and we have here the word muraqabah, vigilance, which is derived from the root raqaba. And if we take those same 3 root letters and just rearrange them, we have the word qaruba, which means to become proximate or close to someone. And if we take those 2 words together now, we get the beautiful symmetry whereby taking oneself to account grants one proximity. Muraqaba leads to qurba. A word with 3 root letters rearranged will give you the meaning of the other 3 root letters. It's beautiful. The nature of the Arabic language and how it speaks of the nature of things. And so that's why, if you see in a Hadith Qudsi, for example, where Allah Azza wa Jal mentions وَمَا تَقَرَّبَ إِلَيَّ عَبْدِي بِشَيْءٍ أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا افْتَرَضْتُ عَلَيْهِ, that there's nothing more beloved to me in terms of my slave drawing closer to me than for him to fulfill the obligations that I've placed on him. وَمَا يَزَالُ عَبْدِي يَتَقَرَّبُ إِلَيَّ بِالنَّوَافِلِ حَتَّى أُحِبَّهُ, and my slave continues to draw closer to me through extra acts of worship, supererogatory acts, until I begin to love him. Now, something really interesting here. You will begin to engage more acts of worship the more conscious that we become that Allah is watching us. The more muraqabah, the more vigilance we have, the more proximity we will gain, because the more we become then in states of worship. And what's really interesting here is from the khasa'is or the Prophet ﷺ, the special qualities, that he had a number of obligations over and above what we have. He had obligations that were not obligations on us. Why would that be? Why would the Prophet ﷺ have obligations that we don't have? And so if you look at these, the idea of an obligation, that is what draws you closer to Allah. And the nawafil, those extra supererogatory acts, are those things in which continue to draw you to Allah, draw you closer to Allah, to proximity, in addition to your obligatory acts. But how about if you have a being whose all of his obligatory acts are perfect, that all of his nawafil are perfect? What remains? More obligatory acts, so that we know the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his state is continual proximity. There's not a moment except that he continues to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we find in this amazing, beautiful collection of Al-Imam An-Nawawi the hadith of Mu'adh bin Jabal, the great companion. And this hadith contains so multiple layers of meaning, and it's narrated by 2 companions, Mu'adh bin Jabal and Abu Dhar, Jundab bin Junada. And these 2 noble, blessed companions, these great figures in our deen, they both narrate this hadith. And this hadith explains to us the entire gamut of our relationship in 3 short sentences. That the Prophet ﷺ says, "Ittaqillah haythu ma kunt." Be conscious of Allah. Taqwa is a very deep idea that escapes translation, if you like. It's in some senses calling us to be conscious of Allah, being aware of Allah, being mindful of Allah, being vigilant that He's watching us. Ittaqillah haythu ma kunt. Wherever you may be mindful of Allah. وَأَتْبِعِ السَّيِّئَةَ الْحَسَنَةَ تَمْحُهَا. And follow up any slip that you may have with a good deed. Why? Because a good deed is going to erase that slip. وَخَالِقِ النَّاسِ بِخُلُقٍ حَسَنٍ. And treat people well. 3 short sentences, and our entire relationship structure has been explained. Our relationship with Allah. Ittaqillah haythu ma kunt. Be vigilant of Allah wherever you may be. وَأَتْبِعِ السَّيِّئَةَ الْحَسَنَةَ تَمْحُهَا. That's our relationship with ourselves. If you slip, because look, we're not a people that we accept that we're going to, it's not that we condone sinning, but we accept slipping. That's why we don't refer to it, it's a sin, but it's a slip. And so if you slip, Just do something that will wipe it out. Follow it up with a good deed, and that good deed will serve to wipe it out. And only someone who's conscious, mindful of Allah watching him, vigilant, and only someone who, when they slip, is mindful enough to correct themselves, then we see that such a person will treat other people well, and that's our relationship with creation. 3 short sentences, and all of what we need to know is there. And so this is an example of what we refer to as Jawami'ul Kalim. This is a description of the Prophet ﷺ, that he was given Jawami'ul Kalim. Again, an expression which really escapes an attempt to translate it. But really it's where the hadith are so amazingly comprehensive in telling us everything that we need to know. Few in words, but oceanic in meaning. How is that possible? We find it difficult to articulate at times what it is that we want to say and convey. And so the idea of Jawami' al-Kalim can be understood as a theory of prophetic speech, what it means to convey divine guidance. Prophetic thought is clear, it's perfectly formed. It's then left to just a certain choice of words to convey the thought pattern of a prophetic mind. In other words, the internal perfection is echoed and matched by pairing those thoughts to exact mirroring words. And the Prophet ﷺ, his speech is economical, i.e. few words we find in his speech, exactly because his words perfectly mirror his intent. And when that happens, superfluity in speech, in other words, having to use extra words, itself becomes superfluous. You don't need to use extra words then. We need to maybe just look at it a different way, that words have a non-physical dimension to them when they exist within us as thoughts. And before those thoughts enter into the physical world as words, where do they exist? They exist inside of us, combined with qualities such as sincerity and truthfulness and honesty and all those beautiful qualities that Imam an-Nawawi speaks about in this garden that he refers to again and again. And so when these thoughts from within this world find their way into the world, they can have a penetrative effect. And what's again so interesting is that the word kalam in Arabic comes from a root word kalim, and kalim means to cut or to penetrate. Look at the word, it's indicating exactly what it does, because words can cut someone positively or negatively. And we know with the words of the Prophet ﷺ, they penetrate us. They go so deep, but in such a positive way. And so here we find thoughts are perfectly captured by words in the speech of the Prophet ﷺ. What is being intended by him is exactly what is being said. And that being the case, it does not require extra words or additional sounds. And because they are exact, they are meaningful in so many different ways. And because the Prophet ﷺ wants to convey an idea which can be understood at multiple levels, the words employed are precisely those words which can serve that purpose. And so we can go and read many ahadith, all of the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and we'll find the same idea reflective in all of his beautiful words ﷺ. Few words, deep meaning, because they are coming from a place that's so pure. And so that's something that we can learn, of course, from the life and lessons of the Prophet ﷺ. So alhamdulillah, a short journey through the station of vigilance, the garden of vigilance. Inshallah, tomorrow we will take the journey, even though it may be short, through the garden of taqwa, inshallah ta'ala. If anyone has any questions, I think we can maybe take one or two. Alhamdulillah. MashaAllah. We have a lovely question here from Aidan, who was a student here at Cambridge. Of course, I remember Mubarak on your Shahada. Allah bless you. Alaikum salam. How does this? So the question is, how does this tie in with the fact that the Prophet ﷺ used to repeat his words? The repetition is for clarification, and the words themselves are for deep meaning. So if words have the way that they are delivered and the choice of words, the words are what conveys the deep meaning, and the repetition of the word is to sometimes emphasize a point, to clarify a point. And even we find that in our speech that we do that. If we want to clarify a point, we mention it more than once. Some people need to hear it more than once to get it. Tabarakallah, the same applies to teachers as well. The more that we prepare for these lessons, the more we realize that subhanallah, I very little that I understand of the words of the Prophet alayhi salam. And so it should be one of our ongoing du'as to Allah that, Ya Allah, please allow us the ability to be able to understand the words of the Prophet alayhi salam, because his words are like oceans, right? So, we would prepare to set sail to the oceans. How about when we set sail to understand the words of the Prophet alayhi salam? We shouldn't just open the book. We should be prepared of how we're going to approach this book. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So, how can we keep this world? How can we keep this world and akhirah in balance? Again, this is a beautiful lesson here of muraqabah, is to be vigilant. So, whatever if you're living in a paradigm of Allah and His Messenger, and then you engage the world, you'll be vigilant, mindful of the things that you need to be mindful of while we're navigating the world, because the world is not an easy place, especially the context that we find ourselves in now. So the depth of being in that paradigm becomes ever more important. And again, like I said, I think in the first session that we had, that it's important that we set up gatherings and places that people can come and listen to reminders, engage in the words of the Prophet alayhi salam, listen to the words of Allah, listen to the great people speaking who have many meaningful things to say, and stay connected. And that's why, because look, it's never going to be that a teacher gives you a solution, and that solution, that's it. Life is that it's about constantly struggle. It's a constant struggle to find that balance, to find that what we would term in a modern world that happy place. But we have to keep trying, and tabarakallah, some of us will find it. Inshallah, we make dua that we do. And the most beautiful thing is that we can die trying. Please tell us, Dr. Yunus Salim, Allah bless you, more about the synchrony of his pure thought and his pure succinct speech. In fact, that's a topic which I've spoken on before. It's available on the Cambridge Muslim College website. It's called The Nature of Prophetic Speech. So it might be a good idea just to revisit that. Alhamdulillah. So, Muhammad. There's another question here, and we'll take this as the last question. If the Prophet ﷺ's intentions perfectly match his word, how is it that we can still misunderstand hadith? Again, if I refer you to that talk, because here I speak in that talk about, it's one thing for words to carry your intent with them, but don't forget that those words need to go through the air and into someone else's physical world. So it's not the fact of the person who's giving you the words with his pure intent. They have to now come through your structures. They need to go into your ears, into your internal world. How are you dealing and understanding those words? What's inside of us, the purity of who we are? Is that reflecting the beauty of what we're hearing? So it's not just the idea of the words coming from a particular being. We need to also be receptive to them in a certain way. That's one thing. The second thing is that the nature of language is it's in many senses ambiguous. Words have many meanings to them. So that's why someone can misunderstand the words of the Prophet ﷺ, but that's only because they can convey multiple different meanings. But all the meanings are good. So here then we'd have to sit down and look at examples of which words do we mean and what meanings can someone take from them. And here I'll say we can Bismillah sit down and speak of the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and we'll see that everything he says is beautiful, like pearls. Alhamdulillah. And then from our brother Aftab, Professor Aftab Ahmed, Allah bless you, how muraqabah is related to khushu'. Yeah, absolutely. The more vigilant that you're in that mind frame, then you'll have presence, khushu'. these are, all of these ideas are linked together. It's not that khushu lives in a different world, muraqabah lives in a different world, sabr is completely over there, and somehow they're all linked together. No, they need to find anchor in one human being, and that's what, again, what we're here for, to try to see how much of that we can get into our lives. Alhamdulillah. Allah bless you. Thank you so much for joining us again from so many different parts of the world. It's a great honor to see you here. I pray that all your Ramadan, for everyone who's fasting all over the world, that it's a time full of blessings and benefit, inshallah. We ask you to keep us all here at the CMC and all the Muslims in your du'as, inshallah. We look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, where we will speak about the garden of taqwa, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu.